All right, so sort of couched around everything we're talking about so far is sort of good and evil. The tactics that some people use to be involved in a conversation, the motives that we have, whether it be because you're a believer or a non-believer or anything else. I've come to a place where I think right now in 2017, we're in a strange spot where the institutions that used to help us keep some of this stuff in the lanes, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's right and wrong, what's real and not real, whether it's true or not, that these institutions are crumbling, and by that I mean that media is crumbling, our political institutions seem to be crumbling, our academic institutions, so that's the one I really want to get into with you. All of these things are starting to crumble. It's partly because information has changed so much.
I would argue that even worse than crumble, but...
What, you would say they're decimated already?
No, I would argue that the academy, certain sections of the academy, the sciences I think are doing very, very well. The humanities are in shambles, certain departments, anything tainted by postmodernism, particularly gender studies, the conceptual penis.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. So let's just go to the conceptual penis.
As a social construct.
As a social construct.
Right.
You wrote a hoax paper with James Lindsay.
Right.
And you got this published.
That we thought was extremely funny.
I mean, I read it. It's jaw-droppingly ridiculous.
Yeah, and it argued for climate change being responsible for the conceptual penis. Yeah, and I thought it was really funny. It was a satire.
Sort of the main takeaway of it is that the penis is not really a real thing. It's just this sort of amorphous idea.
Yeah, and we threw in a lot of moral jargon. We appealed to their moral sensibilities.
Okay, so why, Pete? You're an academic. Why would you write a hoax paper? Why would you mock the very institutions of which you are a member
Because I think that there are departments in the universities that are making a mockery of our institutions. So when you said crumbling, I don't think that's not the word I would have used, although it's accurate in a sense, but these people are fabricating not only their own knowledge bases, they're writing things in journals that they then cite that becomes knowledge. They're manufacturing ideas that are totally untethered to reality. This is how crazy this is. So look, I'm going to explain it. I'm going to try to explain this. You reel me in if this is unclear.
Okay.
But this idea is so crazy that anybody listening to this can say that can't possibly, this can't possibly be true. So this is the idea, and then I'm going to give you asked me about belief, I'm going to give you an analog in theology.
Okay.
So what these people do is that they have moral intuitions based upon Marxist thought, basically. I'll get to that in a second. So what they do to justify this is they manufacture their own epistemology, their own way to know that justifies the conclusions that they have, so that then they can go out and become activists. Now, quick detour.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems facing the left right now is anybody who calls out a bad idea is viewed as somebody on the right. We've got to stop that.
I know a little something about this.
You know a little something about this.
Yeah.
A lot about this. So I'm going to give you an analogy in theology. So this guy, Alvin Plantinga, is a Christian philosopher. So he has these beliefs, they're actually more than that. They're claims about reality and about Jesus being the Son of God. So he realizes that there's no evidence that can take him there. So what does he do? He manufactures his own epistemology. He said, well, we're going to say that there's this thing called the God sensor, and the God sensor, some people have it, and it allows you to, just as I apprehend the color red, so too do I apprehend God. So he makes an epistemology to justify these insane claims about the nature of reality. So just as he has done that, critical theory is that epistemology that is used, and I can explain that. It's complicated. I'm afraid we're going to lose people because we got a lot of terms we got to throw out. It's very complicated. But what I would like to attempt to do in this segment is to link the madness on campuses right now to the intellectual engines driving that madness. And make no mistake about it, these departments tainted by postmodernism are absolutely filled with zealots and morally motivated ideologues.
Okay, so I'll do a little catch up so that in case anyone's missing anything. So first, let's talk about what is postmodernism. I know most of my audience knows that, but let's just do a couple definitions quick.
So let's do the definition. So Okay, so the Frankfurt School has this idea of, well, let's even go back for it. Let's go back to Karl Marx. Karl Marx was a philosopher. Oh, here's a bonus question. Why did Hitler hate Karl Marx?
I feel like there's a good punchline.
Well, it's not a joke, it's actually true, because he was a Jew. And anything the Jews touched were
but otherwise they would have loved each other.
I thought they were a great guy. No. Okay, so Marxist economics, and these people aren't Marxists, they're more Marxian would be a better term. Marxist economics looks at the world in terms of economic oppression. There are oppressor classes, etc. So they have, and then we'll get to the idea of postmodernism. It's simple and complicated. So they've taken this idea of these Marxian notions of oppressor classes and looked at them in terms of gender and race and for example, the patriarchy, and then they have hierarchically prioritized people within that list. So the patriarchy is white, heterosexual, cisgendered, which is a thing, males. And they want to.
You're at the top of this. You are a badass motherfucker.
I am absolutely top. But that's the other thing they do. Just like religion, they have their own defense mechanisms, and that's what they say. Well, you can't criticize it because you're a cisgendered white heterosexual male.
And is the ultimate irony of this that is prejudice. That is prejudging people because I could then sit here and go, wait a minute. Peter Boghossian, a white, straight, cisgendered male?
Yeah.
Well, I can prejudge you based on your immutable characteristics.
Okay, so this is indispensable to talk about. So you are using words based upon normal, ordinary definitions. I'll give you examples some more. It's like, so when you use racism, it's the way I use it. It's the way most people who haven't been indoctrinated by gender studies in the postmodern left. It's the idea that you do not judge people, particularly negatively, but you don't make judgments about people based upon an immutable characteristic like their skin color. But they've changed that definition to make it systemic racism. They've changed that definition to put in a power vector, a hierarchical power vector that only flows one way. So for example, in this, blacks cannot be racist against whites. So they have snuck, it's very sneaky, they've taken a normal word, added a moral component to it, and changed the definition of a word. Here's some, if I may give you some more examples, please. Like equality. Equality is a good thing, but they've shifted from equality to equity. Now, what does equity mean? Equity means, well, we need a certain number of people representative of the general population. 17% African Americans, we need to have 17%. But the problem is that they also want to take into account historical discrimination and a kind of reparations for that. So those numbers are even higher. So I think it can be summarized in Ruth Bader Ginsburg's quip or joke or whatever it is. How many female Supreme Court justices do you think there should be? 9. So it's not just, right? It's not just that we want equal representation. We want more because of past injustices. Go ahead, because we got to talk about deconstruction, we got to talk about violence, we got to talk about why all these things, when you understand them from this mindset, they're all coming from the same school of thought affected by critical theory. That's why the most.
So now let's define critical theory.
Yeah. So critical theory is this idea that that traditional power dynamics and and this is oversimplified, but it's a general idea from which we can have a starting point for a conversation.
Yeah.
See, that's again, I thought to myself, I'm going to get 500 emails, and I'm just trying to, and it makes me, it makes me self-censor, and then I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's real. That's a real, I don't want to get lost in that. Yeah. But that is a real thing. I mean, I find it for myself sometimes. I try to talk broadly about things because I want to communicate big ideas, and hopefully people will then read some books or watch some other videos or follow some other people on Twitter or whatever. And then even if you talk broadly, well, you see, he swept over that thing.
Right, or he didn't know this. Or why didn't he talk about the Frankfurt School? Like, he didn't mention Horkheimer once, or Adorno, or all these guys, or that guy's. And you just get to a point where all of that self-censoring, it diminishes the message. It's not good for you. It's not good for conversations. It's not good for Okay, so anyway,
that's why I mentioned the Thinquisition at the top
and
of the
I
show.
think that was, I heard that. Yeah, I think that was
Thinquisition right now. If you think for yourself and you are not afraid to buck the trend, they will come to get you. It's exactly what you're talking about. So critical theory.
So it's the idea that it's basically a Marxist idea. It's the idea that there are these entrenched power structures and entrenched power dynamics. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to recognize these, and then we need to overthrow them. We need to deconstruct these traditional hierarchies to make society more, that's the thing, more equitable, more fair, more what is it? It's complicated. So these kids protesting at Evergreen or what have, they don't just ex nihilo just get this idea that they're just gonna, no, they get this, these are coming out of specific departments in the university, and when they're asked, why do you do this, or what is this, they talk, well, my professor said this, and then this is the insane part that gets back to the conceptual penis again, that these people have their own lines of literature. That is, these are intellectual cesspools. They have, that's going to get, so they have
hashtag intellectual cesspools. Yeah, I'm going to start using that one.
That they have manufactured what they think, that's why they have to, like with cultural appropriation, they have to import ideas like power, because the whole thing is made up. It's completely fabricated because they want to overthrow these traditional hierarchies. So these kids get this idea from their professors, who then get promoted in tenure because they publish in journals and their stuff is almost never cited by anybody, but yet that's how you rise up. And then what happens is you have a whole canon of knowledge and you go out and teach people. And then you have diversity training, and the shame of this whole thing is that there is legitimacy to white power. There is legitimacy to some of this stuff, but the way that it's metastasized almost doesn't allow any kind of liberation. It does almost the exact opposite of what they want to do, because it gets you people like Trump. But one more thing I was saying.
Yeah.
But then what happens is it goes to colleges of education, and then they start teaching. And I think I told you my son has, in his geography, he has geography, civics. I can't remember. I'm looking at stuff. They've never even opened a map. They've never in civics class, how many Supreme Court justices, legislative branch, how many Senate, none of that stuff. But he knows everything about the Black Panthers. But he knows everything about the civil rights. The civil rights movement is extremely important. Wonderful stuff. But it should not, we need to, I'm looking at a map, kids need to know what country is above Canada. But anyway, all of this stuff gets back to certain departments in the university that are pumping out nonsense, that are indoctrinating people, and exactly like a religion, they have their own defensive structures. They're, being offended is the new thing. Inclusion is another word that they've changed the meaning of. So there is a direct line between, is this clear so far?
I'm with you. It's clear to me.
Yeah, okay. So
I'm
there's
a pretty good judge of what the audience.
Okay, so because if it's not clear, something needs to be unpacked. So they want to overthrow these traditional hierarchies, and they've manufactured their own base of scholarship to do so.
So how?
So that's why it's worse than crumbling. Because at least if something crumbles, something worse didn't take its place. Like if an alarm, like it's like having an alarm clock that rings randomly. So it's worse than just having an alarm clock that doesn't work. Yeah. It's they're pumping out fabricated nonsense that's totally untethered to reality, and the moment you call these people out on it, they don't believe in dialogue in any way. Yeah. They'll slander you, they'll write your name on the bathroom wall, they'll scream at you. So the only thing to do is you got to hoax them. You got to have a non-traditional way to deal with people who are so fundamentally irrational that they're not willing to have a conversation.
And that led you to writing this hoax and turning this thing on its head. All right, there was so much there I want to get to. So first off, what's the connection with the religious mind that these people have?
Wonderful
because
question.
This strikes me as the new religion.
That's
that in a weird way,
right.
Politics, but this leftist, postmodern, Marxist stuff, that this is the new religion. They mock
100%
they mock
correct.
Everyone else for their beliefs.
Right.
But they have a belief that is so tethered to their own being that if you challenge it in any way, they'll hate you, but they'll also outcast anyone that tries to
100%
question.
correct. And
so what does it say about that kind of mind?
So That is an awesome question. So actually, Lindsay and I wrote a paper again. Privilege is the original sin for the left. So, but there is one fundamental difference. You're having Shermer and Prager come into the studio and debate, and it's going to be civilized. No one's going to punch each other. They have actually very fundamental moral disagreements.
Yeah, huge. I mean, one of them, Prager, believes that you cannot have morality without God, and Shermer believes the complete opposite. So this is powerful stuff that they've agreed.
And they're going to have a dialogue about that.
And I'm not going to score it.
I don't know if it's a debate. I don't really, I'm not a fan of debate. I think having a conversation is much better. But so you have the same mechanisms in this new secular religion. You have privilege, which is a type of original sin. You have blasphemy laws, which are political correctness.
Wait, let's just really clear that for people. So when you say that privilege is the original sin, that's like saying Jesus died for your sins, basically. Like, if you were born white, and especially cisgendered, heterosexual, all that shit that you are, that you are there's nothing you can do to overcome that sin.
And this is the part that's...
Except bow
This is the part that's the mind blow, and this is the part that makes me unbelievably sympathetic to Christians in particular, as opposed to other religions, that's really changed my mind significantly. Christians have a redemption narrative. These people have no redemption narrative. If you're privileged, that's it, you're fucked. Like, there's no redemption for you.
You can bow down forever.
So there's something about being able to be redeemed that these people don't have. And that's why you see these vitriolic attacks. They're merciless on other people on the left, eating other people on the left. The Obros, the snake that eats itself.
Yeah. So, okay.
There's a lot there. So it is a new secular religion, and maybe we have modules in our brain, I don't know, and maybe it's covariant with culture. There are things in the culture and act in our brain, and we have the same thing. And Jonathan Haidt has talked about this. We have purity versus sanctity. Maybe we have, ways of interpreting reality, but make no mistake, this is a secular religion. And when you call out the empress for having no clothes, that is it. You have committed, you are in trouble.